Explosions during a rally held by a rebel group in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo have killed at least 11 people and injured around 60 others. The blasts happened just after the M23 leaders had addressed thousands of people in Bukavu. The Rwandan-backed group recently captured the city from the Congolese military. But that's far from the other problem bedeviling the country: the fate of 50,000 Congolese who have been turned into refugees hangs in the balance, and the numbers are set to rise as more people escape the conflict and the forceful conscription by M23 rebels. Here is their story.
Events of the past 2 months have been both confusing and depressing for many locals who are directly affected by the onslaught of the M23 rebel group in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. This was in mid-February. Displaced Congolese in Rwanda are now headed back across the border into Bukavu, a key city in eastern DRC now taken over by M23 fighters allied with Rwandan troops. For some, the return is also laced with concern.
There is no activity there, and everything is closed. But we have taken the courage to come to the border to go home. This is our home, and we have the right to go home.
In contrast to the hundreds making their treacherous return home, thousands of others are finding alternative ways to escape the violence. More than 50,000 people have fled fighting in eastern DRC into Burundi, risking their lives by swimming across the Rusizi River using their possessions as life rafts. Over 20 have died in the last 2 weeks. Those who made it claim that if they had stayed in DRC, they would have been forced into conscription by the M23 rebels.
Just for the first 2 weeks, we have received more than 36,000 in Rugombo, which is the border I mentioned, and 6,000 currently at the transit center close to Bujumbura, which makes it around 42,000 people already seeking asylum.
The United Nations Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, had expected the violence to fuel an exodus to Burundi, making plans to help up to 58,000 people over 3 months. The numbers were likely to increase as hostilities in DRC advanced towards the town of Uvira, near the main official border crossing with Burundi. Another 13,000 people have meanwhile fled across to Uganda, and some 2,000 more have gone to other neighboring countries since the start of January. UNHCR welcomed the Burundian government's decision to grant refugee status to those arriving, ensuring swift access to protection and aid.
To respond to this worsening emergency, UNHCR is seeking $40.4 million to strengthen preparedness and deliver life-saving protection and assistance to 275,000 internally displaced people in South Kivu, North Kivu, Maniema and Tanganyika provinces of the DRC, as well as to support a potential influx of 258,000 refugees, asylum seekers and returnees in neighboring countries, including Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda and Zambia.
Amid the takeover of M23 rebels in Bukavu, this incident jolted the Central African nation when 2 explosions rocked a city in eastern DRC after a meeting of the Rwandan-backed M23 group killed at least 11 people and wounded around 60. President Felix Tshisekedi called the explosions a heinous terrorist act in the eastern region, where M23 have captured swathes of territory in recent weeks in battles with the Congolese army. The rally was attended by Colonel Nangaa, head of a coalition of groups that includes the M23. He was leaving the platform where he had been speaking when the explosion sounded. it was not immediately clear what the source of the explosion was. In hindsight, MONUSCO, the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is supervising a ceasefire.
I had told the President of the Republic, the Prime Minister, I reiterated it here to Mr. Governor, MONUSCO is actively preparing to play a role in supervising the ceasefire, knowing that obviously a ceasefire, when it materializes, will require the commitment of the involved parties.
Hundreds of soldiers from the DR Congo's Republican Guard walked the streets of Kinshasa in a show of force as fighters from the M23 group continued their offensive in the country's east. The United Nations spokesperson says at least 700 people have been killed in intense fighting in Goma, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo's North Kivu province. Rwandan-backed armed group M23 has seized Goma, the biggest city in the country's east, and is advancing southwards as volunteers and the struggling Congolese army attempt to beat them back. Africa Bureau, WION World is One.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.